Good afternoon, all of you. In the last class, I think we had discussed about uh, the tribes of Northeast, particularly Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, and Manipur. And today we're going to discuss about particularly Meghalaya and uh, one minute, and Mizoram and Nagaland, and particularly status of tribal population and their culture and their lifestyle. So, 1 minute. Okay. So, when you talk about particularly travels and Northeast India, and when it comes to Meghalaya, actually, the state Meghalaya actually named literal meaning of Meghalaya actually abode of the clouds, and the state of Meghalaya has also been referred as the Scotland of the East. And for its beautification, you can talk about natural setting, okay, green mountains, and particularly for the rivers. Okay, so it looks like English climate or Western climate, and mostly it is the geographical area is bounded by north and east of by Assam, and from the south and west by Bangladesh. So it is shared the border with the Bangladesh country. And particularly when you talked about Meghalaya, one major thing that it is received heavy rainfall. You, all of you know about the Cherrapunji, right? And in Cherrapunji, actually, it is received the highest rainfall in India, particularly. And if you look into the climatic condition, particularly, it is you can talk about there is a lot of humidity as well. With you can talk about RSS around annual rainfall you'll find in Meghalaya particularly, and particularly in the context of the Shillong areas particularly, the highest elevation experience generally low temperature that actually come up made the climate humidity prone area. And if you look into particularly the formation of the Meghalaya state as such, and it is a full-fledged state on 21st January of 1972 particularly, and it is considered as 21st state of India, and it has particularly seven administrative districts like West Garo Hills, East Garo Hills, South Garo Hills. Most of the on the basis of hills, they have been divided into different districts. And Meghalaya is considered homeland of three major tribes, particularly the Khasis, the Jatnis, and the Garos. And particularly it is famous for you can talk about Khasi and Garo, followed by a clan system. And the Garo inhabits in the western Meghalaya, and the Khasi in the central Meghalaya, and the Jatni in the eastern Meghalaya. Means particularly the Meghalaya is divided into three parts that they call Western Meghalaya, Central Meghalaya, and the Eastern Meghalaya. And in each three part, particularly, different tribal group have been presented, suggested. And while talking about the Khasi tribe, particularly, the people particularly staying in the plain area of Brahmaputra River and Surma Valley, and which were divided by the Khasi and Jatni hills. And since these hills, particularly the Khasi and Jatni hills, were covered with grass, particularly grass, or whatever we mean, it is said that the folk inhabiting the hills were known to be residents of plains, as are the people. They are also called as the grassland or generally the grassland. And the Khasis have many racial character. प्रजातिगत जो बोलते हैं ना differences. So Khasi has have many racial characteristics and that are common with the resident of the particular Neolithical peoples. And the language of particularly of these Mundas and Khasis particularly belong to the same family of speech like they called Astrik, and from which the people of Indochina and Indonesia have been derived. Means here you find like in the previous classes we have discussed about it mostly Mongolite group of people, but here it is they are associating with Indonesia and China as well. And if you look into the language particularly, and this Khasi language has intimate connection with the language of Mono-Khmer group of Myanmar, means they are not only associating with what you call the uh, uh, Indochina and Indonesia, but also same time they are associated with the Myanmar culture from which as well as the Malaya Peninsula culture, and that's language actually the language they have been brought from, and their language also similar to Central India and the Nicobar Island as well. And the present Khasi language, what they now speak, what they now particularly spoken language as it's spoken and written was adapted by the Welsh Calvinist missionary. Means it is one of the Christian group, and from there they have been they have the Roman script as well, and from that actually they are practicing this type of language. If you look into the land system, each village in the Khasi Hills has its own land. Means as we have discussed now, there are three central mainland. Western and Central and Eastern India, sorry, Eastern Meghalaya. Accordingly, they have divided the hills, and every hill there each tribal group settled, and from like that, each village, the Khasi Hills, has its own land in the right of private ownership. So there is no community ownership, and there are two main classes of land, particularly Khasi Hills, namely red lands, and another is Quinty land. And red lands are the lands set apart for community over which no person have proprietary, heritable or transfer. So particularly their land cannot be transferred to other people, or they cannot transfer to other individuals. So it is mostly particularly right to use, occupy, long as occupied. Particularly those who are occupying this land, particularly the tribal land, they are the owner of that particularly land. And if you look into there is another office bearer they called chief, okay, and traditional chief they call them as chief, and these chief administer the whole areas, and the jurisdiction, geographical jurisdiction, they called it HIMA, and HIMA is controlled by the states. And loosely described, the HIMA refer to the state or a particular geographical area. And both the traditional institution, whether it is HIMA or SIM, okay, both are responsible for the entire administration as well as the governance system, welfare system of their state or the what they call HIMA. And if you look into religion, particularly the religion of Khasi group, they are basically the worship, basically worship the animist or believing animist as well as the spirit. There is no idol as to as concern with their spiritual being or animist worship, and no image as well. And there is they observe generally believe in the natural nature worship, and the priest particularly who particularly pray for them, or observe the festival or observe the function particularly. They refer to as Liangdu clan, but the advent of the British, with the advent of the British Raj, a major portion of the Khasi has gone into Christianity. So once again, like in Arunachal Pradesh and other parts here also, there is a lot of influence of Christianity, and you will find the tribals having the Christian identity. And these Khasi tribal communities is generally dependent on home cultivation, and they are particularly they depend upon the shifting cultivation as well as particularly that what you call the Kodu Chasa. They also engage in other related substance activities such as fishing as they are settled in nearby the river as well. Okay, then fishing, hunting, rearing of the cattle. These are other as well as they also cultivate particularly different vegetables as well as the rice. And mostly, if you look into they also engage in the cottage industries, industrial arts, particularly like the handloom weaving, stone cutting, jewelry making, and particularly beekeeping. These are other forms of livelihood activities they are engaged with. and particularly manufacturing of good when you talk about handicraft, woolen cloth, particularly cotton cloth, whether it is axes as well as silverware, they also engage with. And in talked about inheritance of their particularly uh, the property inheritance or the inheritance of the house when talked about, and they are purely a matrilineal society. It is not a patrilineal society. Particularly, the women have the major power here, and the descent of an individual is always recon and traced from the mother alone. Though her if you look into the genealogical tree of other tribal, if you compare between this Khasi and other groups, you find that Khasi has purely a matrilineal society where mother has the power, mother has the responsibility, as well as the everything, the inheritance goes to the particularly woman or the girl child. The Khasi society is generally classless society. You will not find any difference within different group of people in the Khasi community. They consider they are equal, so say, though they are giving importance to both the groups. Any group exists in their society, whether male or female, but inheritance is always in the matrilineal side. And marriage, when you talked about marriage particularly, is one of the most important ritual they observe, or the people of castes observe, and particularly it is based on their religion, and they follow religion particularly while talking about particular marriage, and without the blessing of God or their creator, it is not possible according to them. And for them, God is particularly ubli like ubli, U-B-L-E-N, ubli. Okay, they consider them as God, and the ancestor and the ancestor of the clan they talked about. Without their blessing, one cannot marry. And there are particularly three type of wedding prevalent among the Khasi communities, particularly if you look into their marriage structure. And one is the Pinahar, then another is Lambod, and another is Idikida. The first were considered most respectable, means there are three types of wedding, and first were considered respectable, which are actually on the basis of the religious sacraments. And the last one is for those who cannot afford the considerable expenses and whatever is done in the marriage. So that's why it is called as the particularly more not respectable marriage in their community or in their group. And the Khasi, particularly when you talk about divorce, it must take place by mutual consent. So every divorce take place in the Khasi community, it is a mutual consent. And in the contemporary form of divorce process is called, which is decided by the village elder. So once again, though there is a mutual consent, but it is always decided by the village elder or the chief man in their village. Divorced person cannot marry each other once again, but are free to marry any other families. And particularly another major issue in that divorce is that one pregnant woman cannot be divorced. You cannot give divorce to a pregnant woman. And their house structure, particularly the Khasi community house structure, traditional house structure, it is oval in nature, in oval in shape, and particularly it is wooden plank with the stone walls, particularly, and the whole walls have been painted in different tribal art and crafts. And if you look into their dress pattern, particularly, and Khasi women rather they follow where the particularly Jainison one is a torn. They refer to two pieces of sari, and each of is worn across the body and is pinned at off shoulder. Generally. So if you look into it, is something like you talked about in our Hindi language. There is ghagra like that. So it is look like that, and they use towel as well, particularly. And if you look into the there are particularly received, particularly generally the ornaments of are gold, like necklace they use, fingering they use, as well as they also wear uh, different other what they call the ornaments as paila, paila, and men wear silver chains as well around their wrist, and the women around their necks as well. And if they have a rich musical culture, particularly they have different music to different occasions or different songs to different occasions, and most of the occasions are associated with the agricultural activities. And while looking at the food habits of Khasis are simple, they use rice as their staple food, and but whenever it is readily available, but if there is not readily available like rice, they generally go for millet and maija, which may be mixed with the rice sometimes. So while talking about the games, they have good number of games are the traditional game, or you can call them as the tribal games, and many games integral to their culture, which are daily activity you can talk about or their lifestyle. And most popular game is the archery, and could be called their state game because it is called as the state game of particularly their community. And besides that, there are other games picked of hopscotch like that. Okay, so they observe different games as well. So if you look into the other tribe, Jantia tribe, what they call, and they also refer to Jawai as well. And Jawai is the headquarter of Jatni Hills, and it is situated around 160 kilometers from Shillong, the headquarter of the state. And the town is circled by the majestic, they called Maidun River. And the Jatni Hills district is inhabited by the tribal community who are descendant of very ancient people of distinct tribal and ethnic origin. They are the natives of particularly Meghalaya, and the Japanese are believed to be the Indo-Mongoloid race from a racial group, although they speak distinct Austric language belong to the Mon Khmer group. However, the people residing in the central region of there are actually two regions in Meghalaya. One is central region, another is the hill region. And those who are living in the particularly central region, they are called particularly who are living in Chutney Hills are called the Nars, PNARS, Nars, and those who are living in the southern and northern regions, or which is mostly plain areas, they are called as Wars, or they also called as Bois. Okay, so accordingly, their geographical region are settled, and Jatni Hills. Sydney Hillside was actually originally in the local language they called it as Kari Khadar Dolai, okay, the land of 12 chiefs. So where they are actually the people who lived there in the hills, and they called it is the land of 12 chiefs because in ancient days Chutney Hills was ruled by 12 chiefs, and who are their own boundaries and power to govern a sizable population. Means particularly the hills that earlier managed by different, sorry, 12 chiefs. On that basis, the hill was named at particularly uh, Gentia Hills. So if you look into the hills, actually there are originally 12 chiefs. They called uh, Natang Elka, Jawar Elka, Nonbag Elka, Reling Elka. These are 12. Actually, there are in your book you will find the names. And beside that, if you look into the land tenure system, the property system actually in these Gentia Hills, it is different from the Khasi community. And particularly, Gentia King did not raise any revenue from the people, and mostly, if you look into the traditional land setup, most of the kings actually get revenue from the land. But here you will not see that. And the king was assisted by the dulis or the chiefs of the villages. And the kings derived the income from the Raj land, means those who are actually government land we call it, and from the tax and import duties of the goods and services. And particularly the land system once again divided into three parts: the service land, the puja land, and the Raj land. So particularly, land was allotted to them which were called service land. Means it is service for the people. Land in respect of the priest means those who are actually worshipping the god, they called whatever given to them, they called it the puja land because they will worship to the god. On against that, they will given some land and they will gain the livelihood from that land. Land belongs to the kings particularly. It is called the Rajland. And from the Rajland, actually, whatever particularly yearning will come, it will go to the kings. And if you look into the religion, the Panar of the or the Gentia people also called as the Pana, and they maintain their unique culture and the religion called particularly Nayatre. And before having food, they thrown some particularly mostly of the food on the ground in honor of the Mother Earth. Say mostly worship to the Mother Earth, and most of the villagers in the hills have a great similarity with the Hindu culture, Hindu religion, and they mostly follow the Hinduism. However, with the influence of Christianity, most of the European they are now observing or believing in the Christianity. And if you look into their inheritance structure actually, and particularly once again, this tribal group also don't follow lineal structure. Either these group are also matrilineal in nature, and particularly this hill traditionally inheritance real property passes from mother to the daughter, particularly the youngest daughter, and they called it as the Khon was there, and other sister also share the property, but the youngest one inherit more because her responsibility to the family means here the youngest daughter have more responsibility than other daughters or the members of the family. So no man in these particular hills can possess land property. So no man particularly they don't have any property here unless if it is self-acquired. If someone buys something or if someone acquires something, that something different. But mostly traditionally, if you look into from inheritance perspective, it is never transferred to a male. Okay. And if you look into the particularly the youngest daughter who are more responsible, who inherited the property, has to perform religious ritual as well and look after the family idols. Here all is puja offering expense. Means she not only accept or not only accept the responsibility of the family, but also same time she look into the pujas, look into the deities of the religion as well. If you look into the family structure, these groups, but particularly the family is the core of their social order. They give much more importance to or highlight about their family. Though it is a mother-centered or woman-centered family structure, the authority of house, the house they called as long, lies with the eldest maternal uncle. Means here, uncle is maternal uncle is much more important. The authority of house, authority of long, what they called, it is in the hand of maternal uncle. He is the head of the clan and represent the same in village matter. Means whenever there is an issue in the village, so it will the maternal uncle who will solve the problem. And particularly, this matrilineal in the hills particular does not mean that female are more supreme than the male, but it is tracing the line of descent through the female lines. But they also call that there is equality. Male also have some power in these groups, but though it is a matrilineal in nature, but male has the power in that group. Like we talked about matrilineal uncle, in every village there is some matrilineal uncles, and or every family has matrilineal uncle. They have the power to rule the village as well. And when you talk about marriage, Chatmi marriage is socially approved and it is arranged generally. And in modern days, however, the unmarried boys and girls enjoy some freedom, particularly while mixing or choosing their life partners. And if you look into particularly the divorce structure of this group, and particularly there is a concept called Jawai Dolsit. Jawai Dolsit or nothing. Divorce take place in the presence of village officials. So with presence of village officials like maternal uncle and all those office bearer of their villages, actually in front of them they take place the actual divorce take place, and the husband or the wife gives the vasan and eight anna paisa. So they have to offer them some particularly monetary in forms of compensation, whether it is husband or wife, sorry, husband or wife, and the latter gives this either to the wife or husband it can give to wife or it can give to husband, as the case may be. I mean, it is depend upon the type of case. If someone is particularly who wants to divorce from whom, it is actually cases for the parents who have been divorced cannot particularly afterward remarry once again. The woman cannot be divorced during pregnancy as it is in the Khasi society. And particularly if you pattern look into the dress pattern, the traditional custom of the this gentia mean are the turban. There is a concept or the cultural term turban. They have the conical cap as well, a hat, a waistcoat, towel known as the randia clay. Okay. So a strip of cloth worn by men around the waist, generally it is feel or you will see among the main group. But the traditional custom of the women are on en route garment worn nicely across the shoulder, variously known as airy garment and move garment as well. So if you look into their house structure, and traditionally from the traditional houses of these communities, they called it as Lungal fruit. Lunga fruit are found in particular Jawai town, other parts of the Jatnia Hill. They have carving of flowers, other design in the particularly walls of their houses. So if you look into their particularly, there are different particularly ornaments they use. The gold necklace, solid round gold necklace. They also talked golden chain as well, earring. Means there are different forms of as well, and ring include twisted gold ring and others. If you look in the staple force, particularly of the occupation, most of the people of this Gentile tribal group undertake different various means there is not a single occupation means it is called as they are also called as most developed tribal group. They have civil servants, they have engineers, they have doctors, they have laborers, cultivators, traders. Means it is mostly kind of a developed tribe. Originally, the main occupation of these people was agriculture, but with the development of their education, development of their society, community, people have chosen different forms of occupation as well. And most of the staple or the prime food of the this Gentia community is the rice and curry. They also consume a good quantity of fish, as are both fresh and dry, and particularly they also particularly like the meats as well as the pork. And if you look into the Gentia Hills particularly, and it is they mostly also depend upon the forest wealth. The product particularly like timber, bamboo, medical horn, and these make them more enter into the business field, and that actually helps them to enter into different business field as well as in other livelihood activities. And if you look into the once again, these people have the games. If you look into archery, is the most prominent or we can call it as the important game in their community. The particularly most of they observe or play with the outdoor games. They played various outdoor games, and but archery is the favorite game in their region. And like they talked about cockfighting, boating competition is there, fog war. You can talk about bullfighting as well. You find wrestling. You will find in that region. And if you look into the festivals, particular Jatia music and dance is very rich in nature, culturally rich, and constitute unique culture in their hills. And it is accompanied by different musical instrument. The float you can talk about, big drum they use. Okay. And Chutney mainly celebrate two popular festivals or dance festival particularly. One is particularly Laho dance festival. Another they called is Berdin Paklam festival. Okay. And this Paklam festival is very old, and every year it is observed, particularly in the rainy season, July to August, and it is most important unique dance festival, and it is also considered most colorful religious festival they consider, and it is particularly celebrated association with the agriculture, particularly during sowing period of a year. And another the Laho festival, particularly it It is also a popular dance group, and at festival, everyone with colorful costumes participated in this type of dance festival. And if you look into another tribal group that is called the Garo tribe, the vibrant and the ethnic people of these communities reside in the Garo Hills. As we are talking about now, there are different regions, and each region they called one of the hill, or the each state, sorry, each district has been called as one of the hills. And also Garo has some hills and are known as the Garos. Garo call them Achik or Mande also. In the Garo language, Achik means hill, Mande means people. So they are means Garo literally refer to Achik Mande, and Achik Mande, the meaning of Achik Mande is refer to hills people. So that's why they are called as Achik Mande or hill people. And if you look into the particularly Garo language structure, the language they use, particularly they are using Tibetan language. The language of Garo is simple. There are no articles or no gender distinction you'll find in the denoting nouns like we have male, female, or we can talk about different forms of gender. So particularly when talked about grammatical things, so you'll not find any distinction between different objects. And if you look into the land system particularly, the land system in Garo Hills consists of revenues area and non-revenues area as well. The revenue areas, the plain areas of Garo Hills, whereas the non-revenue areas are the particularly are the a king clan lands of the Garo. Means those who are king clan group, they are residing particularly in non-revenue area. And revenue areas are the plain areas, whereas the non-revenue areas are mostly the hilly terrain of the Garo Hills. And the social structure of this Garo community or the Garo tribal group is divided into three major clans. One is Marak, another is Sangam, another is Momin. Okay, and these particularly Kachis are exogamous in nature. Marriage within the clan is prohibited and severely punishable if someone is marrying within their clan group. So if you look into the Garo Hills particularly, and there are Nokmas who are the helper of Laskars administer the village community. Since the village community was administered by particularly one people, and they call them Lakshar, and it is also they call them Nukmas, and Nukmas is held by Laskar, who are the helper. And Laskar also appointed by the now no khams, and land belongs to no khams, but only in name. So there are different administration structures within that group, and particularly it is ruled by particularly Nukmas and withheld by Laskars. And while talking about religion group, mostly Garo are now Christians. And before that, the religion of Garo was a mixture of, before the Christian entry, they are called as the Hinduism or the follow Hinduism as well as Anastasis. And most of the Garo nowadays are they consider as Christian. They are following the Christian ideology and nature and the rights as well. And while talking about inheritance of property, and once again, it is the daughter who follow the path, and it is the matrilineal society, and selection of heirs, money, who will be the next inheritance of their family, and they called it as a nokan and depend upon wish of parent. So it is depend upon parent, and parent will choose someone from their particularly family or from their daughters that who will lead the or the who will the next inheritance of their property or the home. The parents choose the best daughter who is usually not always youngest one. So who is the best in everything, they will choose them. And in case of any difference found within the spouse group or the opinion of wife rebels because the Garo society it is basically matrilineal. So there is a chances of particularly if someone's wife is forcing someone to take over, then it is also possible. But mostly it is depend upon the parents. So there is no that the younger your the older daughter will be the inheritor. So property once owned by a mother cannot pass out of. So if someone is owned, it is with him or her. So it cannot be passed to someone else. and where the during the lifetime, particularly woman's husband can fully use her property and with complete authority, and but cannot will it out. Means here another tone you will find that in this community, so the womanhood or what you call the woman, particularly it is in matrilineal nature. However, in the lifetime, husband will particularly use the property, but it will not take away. However, matriarchy is prevalent in strict sense, and particularly according to Garo law, and the women simply act as a vehicle of inheritance. So they simply transfer the inheritance property to one of the women, but however, generation to generation, but it is the man who will control everything. And particularly house structure, if you look into this, Garo lives in the house of built on piles particularly, and usually on steep incline, and the floor covering is layer of raw bamboo. It is always as most of the northeastern state, if you look into one of the major, that's the bamboo what we called, and bamboo is useful not only in craft making, not only in habitat, but also used for the house construction. The roof is usually thick, thatched with grass or with bamboo leaves. And when we're talking about the barrow foods, particularly, they will eat almost many times the animals or the meat. They prefer to eat meat, and particularly usually goat or pig or particularly dogs. Okay, and particularly they buy or they generally the animals they particularly found in their villages. They are the only division of the Bodo. So this Garo community are the part of the Bodo community which eat beef as well as wild animals, except tigers. So any animal they can eat as except the tigers, whether it is snake, whether it is lizard, even small white ant. You can talk about wings and not they talked about. So there are they generally. Uh, So, if you look into their ornament and dress pattern, the Gara community originally dress were quite primitive in nature, traditional in nature. Men wear a strip of blue cotton cloths, okay, blue cotton cloth, women with the red line down the front, and between particularly the simple, their particular dress pattern is very simple, and it is more traditional in nature. Particularly, most of the heads of these women, particularly, they cover their heads, or usually with blue or white cloth. And in winter, if you look into cotton cloth or blanket thrown around the soldier, complete the dance attire. And so it is more traditional in nature on all the festival occasions. So Garo, irrespective of any sex, whether it is male or female, wear headdress with rows of bead stocks with either or they talked about whether it is male or female, both wear bangles as well as earrings. So there is no distinction in that while wearing the particularly any ornament or particularly any dresses. While talking about the traditional ornament, Garo men wear two kind of brass rings actually in their ears. The first is the lobe of the ear, and second is the wire hoops. Okay, sometimes it is 30 to 40 inch in each ear. Okay, so it's a different forms of traditional ornament. And if you look into the necklace of this men and women are usually long barrel shaped. Okay, so if you look into both of them, everyone using the same ornament most of the time. And in the festival time, they have different forms of ornaments, and they have musical instrument like nagra, nadki, particularly gongia, okay, all those things. Most of them are made of the bamboos. And if you look into their occupation particularly, they are considered as the farmer, cultivator, and they loves to till the soil, loves to particularly watch his crops grow, and agriculture is the primary occupation. Okay, and trading actually is restricted, particularly in that particularly they talked about in the marketplace. Now in currency throws, some do trade in the favorite white beads, downs, particularly cloth, timber, but mostly it is prohibited in their region they talked about. And There is some occupation people belong do like blacksmithing, weaving, but it is very less. And games, if you look into once again, particularly these Garo have few traditional games and they have several trials of strength which are performed by youths particularly. They refer to this as no paint in a Garo village. Among games practiced by the Garo, the most important are the what they called Wapang Kala or the cockfighting, and in which particular contestants sit opposite each other on the ground, grasping a short piece of bamboo particularly, and process to try and taunt other of the other. So particularly in most of the regions you will find cockfighting. And festival, if you look into the Gaira festival, Wangla is one of the festival, and it's the most important festival they called it, and it is the last, but not the least ceremony they called in agriculture. Means most of the festival they are associating with the crops, agriculture, okay, and particularly the harvesting time as well as sowing time. And if you look into particularly 1 minute, 1 minute. So these, if you look into these Karo, Khasi, and other the tribes, so mostly they are it is the hill terrain area, and that's why their geographical structure actually divided on the basis of hills. And each hill is named on one of the tribe, whether it is Garo Hill, whether it is Khasi Hill, and most of their inheritance. This tribal group has a matrilineal structure, and woman is the successor of the inheritance. If you look into, and their housing structure depend upon the bamboo, and if you, the common uh, game you can find the cockfighting. But however, Khasi community has archery as the main game, or the state game. So it is broadly about this community. And if we talk about tribes of Mizoram, particularly in Mizoram, if you look into four major tribes, Lusai, Pawai, Lekar, and Chakma tribe actually. So this region of Northeast India actually, particularly if you look into, is the largest concentration of the tribal community. And Mizoram is one of the predominantly tribal inhabited land. If you look in every part of the Mizoram, you'll find one of the tribal. And particularly, if you look into the scheduled tribal contribution or constitution, around 95% of the population of the state of Mizoram belongs to ST communities, and that what you call there is a Lusai tribe, and have the major community constitute around from that 95%, around 70% peoples are belongs to Lusai tribe, with the major tribal group in that in the Mizoram state. And Chakma is the next largest tribal community, which constitute only near to 10%, whereas other like Pawi, Lekar, Kuki, Hamar, and other tribal who only constitute 16% of the total state population. And if you look into the census of 2011, and around 90% of the tribal has been discussed, and most are Christians. From the 100% tribal, 90% tribals are belongs to Christian community, whereas only around 9% are follow the Buddhist culture, whereas there are other few religious group they are following other religion like particularly Muslim or particularly Hindu. So mostly are they are Christians, and they are follower of particularly there are a few followers from Buddhism. And tribal population of Mizoram can be broadly classified into two major heads. One is Mizo tribes, another is non-Mizo tribes. So there is broad two distinction: Mizo tribe and non-Mizo tribe. So the major tribal population are Lusai tribal population. However, the division of the state has been based on the Mizo tribe, and the term Mizo generally refers to the combination of two words. Okay, me, mi refers to people, whereas Jedo refers to highland or the hill. So it is once again the people, hills of people. And when they are combined together, it is called as the highlanders. They are living in the high areas of the particularly forest or the hills. And once again, that Lusa is also called as Mijo. Okay. Mizo is coming from the state name Mizoram, and actually Mizoram state itself established in the name of Mizo. Mizo are also referred to as Lusai, and Pawi refers to as Lai, Lekar refers to as Mara, and particularly there is another tribal Chakma. So there are major four tribal groups lived in the Mizoram. And if you look into the Lusai tribe particularly, Lusai tribe is the largest, but Mizo tribe is the largest in the state, and particularly the largest population, particularly of these two tribal groups have been settled in the Ajiwala and Lungeli district. A sizable number of them also found in the other district of northern Mizoram. And the word Lusai, what they called also Mizo, is a corrupted form of original word Lusei. Okay? So the Lusei tribal group original name was Lusei, and but it is later adapted with the influence of Britishers and with British administration. Actually, it is referred to as Lusai, and it is now considered as the official term. But people want prefer to told them or call them as Lusei than Lusai. And Lusei dialect is known as Dulani. Okay, Dulani is one of the Mizo sub-tribal groups, particularly on their particularly linguistic culture. Okay, so the dialect, the way they speak, way they particularly can write, it is known as Dulan. Okay, and prior to establishment of British Empire or the British colonial rule in Mizoram, most of the social arrangements was already in place for this tribal group. Since member of the one of the group they called Silo clan, so they belong to Silo clan group, and the ruling clan they also called it. They occupied the highest social status in the tribal group or in the major cities, and particularly their custom practice are adopted by on the basis of that Silo clan or the Silo clan group, and particularly Christianity. With the increase of Christianity in that area, actually, most of the tribals transfer their lifestyle accordingly, or the way of life, or you can talk about they have modified their custom as well. However, most of it is the efforts of missionaries, particularly Christian and missionaries, were successful in eliminating the custom and tradition of these tribals. And you will not find the original tribal culture and practice in that community. However, if you look into when you talk about one of the culture is eating rice beer or drinking rice beer, but they refer to Jew, and it was replaced now by what? A popular drink among the tribal group is the tea, because they call the rice beer Jew is an important cultural element. However, with the influence of Christian or the missionary, they have transferred it to the tea as one of their particularly favorite drink, we can call it. And the basic unit of Mizo society is it is in patrilocal. So earlier, most of the tribal as the matrilocal. Here you will find most of the tribal as the patrilocal joint family, which is patrilineal descent and inheritance rule. So here you will find all the inheritance will take place from the other side, and the father is always head of the family and until his death. However, the traditional rule of inheritance when we talked about the transfer of property has been significantly changed with the influence of the modern society, and whatever earlier was practiced, so though it is a patrilineal society, but now we will see there is a transfer of property to the women as well or the girls side as well. So any son who gains the favor of his parent, who is loyal to his parent, and once again, here you will find that those sons which are gain favor of his parents, they will get the inheritance status. And particularly in marriage, in the context of marriage in this Mizo community, particularly, it is solemnized only after having agreed in terms of condition set by family. So it is the family who is important here, who will set some condition that in front of both bride and groom to negotiation. After agreeing upon that by both bride and groom side, then there will be chance of marriage, or the marriage will take place. So agriculture once again is the particularly major occupation of this tribal society or the Mizo society, and their economy is depend upon the agricultural activity cultivation. And they practice from time, and they are practicing this agricultural cultivation practice from their time of immoral, or the method of agriculture, or particularly the shifting cultivation or slash or burn method of cultivation, or what we call the zoom cultivation, by cutting down the forest or the hillsides, burning them after properly dyeing them with the sun, then they sown the particularly any seeds. So it is the normal method, and they have been practicing from the tradition of particularly immoral. And uh, particularly the shifting of, particularly you find in the remote villages, from large units to small units, there is significant changes in the structure, as well as the social relation with the influence of Christianity. And the traditional village of, you will find most of the traditional villages in the Mizo community is homogeneous. You will not find any diversified people, and now it is replaced by the heterogeneity. And if you look another tribal group, that is called Lai tribal group, or it is also called as Pawi tribal group as well. According to 2011 census, is Lai population, actually tribal population is around 51,000, which is about nearly 5% of the total population of the state. And these light tribal groups are mainly concentrated around the southern part of Mizoram, and also they called around the Blue Mountain. And although a larger number of them living across the international border, like Chin state of Myanmar, so you'll find these tribal group lived in the China as well as Myanmar. But most of they are border sharing people, we can call them. They live nearby the border. And the entire Pawi Lai community, whatever we called it, and they are now mostly 99% are Christians. And literacy rate is particularly quite high among them. They are around, you'll find 91% among the Pai community, Lai community are literate. And the entire region of Lai habitation in the Mizo Hill Range, okay, if you look into entire region, and it is actually Mizoram Hills or Mizoram, most of the Pai habitation, Lai habitation you find. Villages are generally located in the hilltops, and with height ranging from uh, uh, to 2,500 feet to 400 feet, and it is the highest peak in that region, so where people generally live. And so that's why they are called also the hill peoples. The entire area, particularly if you look into their environmental factor, environmental condition, it is a pleasant climate they live in. It is neither hot, neither uh, particularly neither hot in the summer, not too cold in the winter. So it is a good environment you can call it. And their dialect, or particularly you can talk about, classified belongs to the Tibeto-Burman group, which is available in Assam or Arunachal Pradesh. And they do not have their own script. They do not have their own script or the language particularly. And they follow particularly Tibeto-Burman language format. It was only through the effort of particularly the missionaries, the Christian missionaries, that the dialect was reduced into written from using Roman script. So now that they are using the Roman script as one of the dialect, and now they speak particularly Dulani was one of the particularly dialect of Mizo. They also speak the Mizo's dialect. The Pawais of Mizoram, this tribal group particularly, though today they are totally converted to Christian or the followed Christian rituals and ceremonies, but it is almost particularly the traditional religious practices they have almost replaced. The Christianity has been replaced, or the Christian practice has been replaced the traditional religious practices of this group. And the sacred building, what they called it, the Viking or church building, and particularly church deacons, particularly they call the elders, are the most influence. So here you will not find any village head, or you will not find any particularly chief. Rather, it is the church head will rule the village. Actually, the entire church service every Sunday or some auspicious day they generally follow. Means they are totally converted to Christian. You will not find any forms of traditional practices, religious practices within that community. And the community have particularly discarded many the traditional folkways as well. Their songs are they already forgetted these particular songs, their dance, and most importantly, the most responsible thing is that it is the Christian and missionaries. And though now they are reviving with the influence of government, actually government implementing different tourism programs to revive particularly the culture. So in that heading, actually, in that heading and subheading, people are now reviving their culture or songs or festival we can talk about. And particularly one major thing as well, over 90% they are literate, and in that context, it is the help of Christianity they are literate, and whatever the customary right or traditional or local rights or particular practices regarding to marriage have lost their relevance actually because they have been influenced by Christian. They are enter into a marriage relation with the Christian rules and regulations. So they no longer observe the traditional forms of rituals. And this group of particularly generally they marry between 16 to particularly 18 for it is for girls, whereas for men it is 25. Within that they generally the marriage always took place. And in the olden days, in the earlier traditional time, the age of marriage is slightly lower, they argue. And marriage by negotiation is the usual form of acquiring a life partner. So always it is a negotiation between two group of people, two family members, then the marriage or life partner actually so someone is acquiring or select the life partner. And among these Pawis, the usual form of marriage is the monogamy forms of marriage. They do not follow polygamy, especially after becoming the Christian. Okay. So prior to that, people generally follow polygamy, but mostly it is the chief of the village who generally follow polygamy. Those who are well, they also follow the polygamy forms of marriage. And the residential family pattern, if you look into, of this community is neither nuclear or extended type. It is in between that. Someone have nuclear family, someone have extended family. And this community is patrilineal in nature, and inheritance is also patrilineal in nature. And we can trace their relationship, trace their particular family structure from the male line. And the major economic resources for fives are land and forest. So they are occupation based mostly on the land and forest agriculture and the forest resources, what we call the non-timber forest product. And the primary activity is the shifting cultivation or what we call the home cultivation in the hill slope areas, that particular region. And land for shifting cultivation cannot be owned individually. So here, for those land actually cultivated is a community land. It is the village who is the owner of that particular land. So village council act as a custodian of the community land. Those were cultivated for the particularly cultivation. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes break. Then we'll start once again. It is okay. Is it okay? Hello, Hussein. Shubhangi Swati. Is it
Yes,
okay?
sir.
We'll take. Okay, okay. We'll take 5 minutes. Then we'll start. Come one second. Okay. So, in particularly Mizoram, there is another tribe called Chokma. Uh, Generally, Chokma also referred or known as Sangma, and they are the second largest scheduled tribe population in Mizoram, who's constitute around 10%, nearly 9 to 10%. Um, and particularly their area of settlement, particularly in Mizoram, is mainly confined to the southwestern as well as western side of the state, and it is actually border with the Tripura state as well as Bangladesh. So if you look into the particularly uh, there are certainly group of people and more recent immigrant you will find in the Mizoram, and it is from for Chittagong or very tract of the Bangladesh. And from the linguistic appearance, the Chakma group of people particularly, they belongs to the Tibeto-Burman group of Mongoloid race and Mongolian race, and particularly this Chakma, there is a language they follow Chakma language, or it is also called as Songma Bhaj or Songma Odha, and it is a Indo-European language. And apart from the southeastern Bengali branch of Eastern Indo-Aryan, so generally they follow a mixed form of language that most of the people influenced by the Bangladeshi immigrants, and they will also find you will find Eastern Indo-Aryan language there, particularly Bengali culture you will find among them. And these Chakmas officially all follow the Sardan and Theravada from the particularly religion. Particularly they follow the Buddhism as well. But their forms of Buddhism is different, and it is associated mostly with the Hindi ideology or Hinduism. And the traditional from the tradition they are particularly following Hindu deities or worshipping Hindu deities as well. And particularly when we talk about Lakshmi, one of the favorite goddess for them, and they worship goddess particularly for the harvest time, and they mostly influenced by the particularly or worship Lakshmi. And particularly these Chakma families exist both nuclear and extended in nature. Today, mostly the family is increasingly became popular uh, because the senior member of the family, and particularly nuclear family, are now become popular in these regions and among the groups as well. The senior member of the family, particularly such as father, mother, or the grandfather or grandmother, or you can call elder, those who are senior actually, respected by the younger children and siblings as well. And if you look into the rule of inheritance, in the Chakmas group follow that each son receive equal share. So it is a patrilineal forms of inheritance, but whereas here each son, if you have two or three sons, equally distribution will be there. Nowadays, the fathers who own a property may give a share not only to a son but also to daughter. It is now a different practice going on. Whereas, particularly in this state of Mizoram, Chakma population is primarily uh, uh, located in the rural belt or rural areas of Mizoram, and only very few person, around one zero, nearly 1% lived in the urban areas, and mostly you will find 99% people lived in the rural sectors. And the development level of development of personality development you can infrastructure development you can talk about service development you can talk about different government programs there is a very less reach to these Chakma groups or you will find low development in the Chakma regions and if you look into the particular majority of these Chakma groups, particularly remains poor and unable to particularly lead their traditional occupation, particularly which is farming, they consider. And due to lack of employment opportunity in that particular region and lack of educational facilities, okay, and they are being lived as a poor on of the employment opportunity as well. And according to census 2011, they have the lowest literacy rate around 45% reported in the particularly census of India. And these, particularly when you talked about Mizoram today, it is predominantly a tribal state we can talk about, and most of the tribes are Mizoram belong to Kuki chain group, okay, which is also found in Assam as well as Arunachal Pradesh, and they follow there belongs to Tibeto-Burman clan family. The vast majority of the tribe in Mizoram are particularly speaking the language which are closely related to almost all them, and most became influenced by the Christianity, which paved the way of mutual understanding and cooperation among the tribal groups. However, it has eroded the tribal art and craft. You can talk about the language, the lifestyle, which is major challenge. However, government has been implementing different development programs, particularly to locate their lifestyle, locate their culture, and that's why they are now slowly developing their or particularly rehabbing their culture as well as particularly their uh, uh, then there is another tribal group in Mizoram that they call Lekher, that is also called as Mara, and these Mara people recognize as one of the scheduled tribe, are the native of Northeast India, and primarily this they have the Mara Autonomous Council and or Autonomous District Council, what they call, and of the state in the Mizoram, where they form the majority of the population, and they are earlier known as Lakher. Now they are called as the Mara. By outsider as their neighbor, they are called as Lucy as well by that name. And Mara was inserted list of scheduled tribe. Actually, now it is called as Mara, which is listed as the scheduled tribe in the Mizoram state since 1978. And if you look into the census data particularly, and this Mara tribal constitute around 4%. At present, there are around 50 villages where Mara tribal people lives, and 59 village council, which is controlled by the Mara Autonomous District Council. And these Mara groups are actually earlier in the earlier period known as the it is considered them as the outside world and under different tribal names such as Mara, Lekar, Sendhu, Jew, Jao, different tribal names they called it, but now they are called as Maras, and they occupy the southern part of Mizoram actually, and the hill tracts situated in the Indo-Myanmar border. So they are located between the Indo-Myanmar border, and Myanmar has a greater influence on the Majula, their culture and their practices. And these tribal Mara communities are offshoot of the Kuki chain group and of particular Tibeto-Burman group clan family as well. So nothing defined is known about their original house, origin of their house, or origin of their home or ancestor. Their ancestral homeland, particularly, is believed have been somewhere in the southern China. So they belong to the China. They call particularly the literature what they call, and they migrated to particularly Tibet region of northern Burma and settled somewhere in the Chin hills of the Myanmar. And from Myanmar, they have traveled to the region, particularly Mizoram region. And the relationship between when you talked about British Empire, our independence. So particularly when talking about the relationship between British and this Mara community, were characterized by particularly different forms of conflict and extending particularly during period of 1924 to particularly the century to the particularly 19th century to the 1924. And all the time, it is the Mara tribe were brought under British control, and British rule brought about political and social changes or economic changes in the region, and also brings stability in the region for the Mara communities. And particularly, there is a subgroup of Mara. They called it particularly uh, uh, Tulsai Siha. They use the Kursaitsia dialect, and there are different actually subgroups speak. Different subgroup of the this Mara community speak different dialect actually, and one of the dialect they belong, they talk about the Lusai Siha, and particularly it is used as lingua franca, by all, particularly Maras. Only the educated Maras, those who are educated, literate, they can speak only Miju language or the English, wherever others generally speak also Hindi. And it is one of the literate tribe you can talk about, educated tribe, the forms of literacy, which is around 82%. And this Mara Autonomous District Council, which is one of the important institutions in the Mara tribal group particularly, it has the particularly this body is responsible for the preservation as well as the promotion of the Mara community, their language, their culture, and particularly in their geographical location. And the Mara language, what people use, or the Raji dialect or Raji spoken language they talked about, is the medium of instruction generally in the elementary schools up to class 6. So here, their own language, what is they call the Mara, it has been practiced among the schools as well. It has been adopted by the schools. The most of the elementary schools from 1 to 6, the instruction or the medium of instruction is the Mara language. And this tribal group consists of different sub-tribal group, or you can say called as particularly Juno, Machapi, Baitu, okay, and there are other group as well. And each subgroup in this Mara community occupies separate territory and since time of their settlement. So every subgroup has their own territory, and they are still living in their own territory. When time, particularly in the time of separate settlement, they have established or settled in each territory, and each in their name of their own territory. And this Mara area is mostly rural in its nature, rural in character, rural in structure, and expect a few of the few people lived in the towns, and particularly in a particular town that is called the Sahia. In Sahia town, few people actually lived in there, and few are in the district capital as well. And majority of the these Maharashtra particularly lives the rural areas, which is Zardu, and their village is characterized bond of kinship and clan, and it is you find a close ties between different villages, which develop a sense of feeling, a sense of community feeling among them, and the household in these villages is bound to participate in community activity. If you not participate, or if someone failed to participate in the community activities, the family is punishable with fine. There is a law in the Mara district autonomous council, particularly. And particularly, if you talk about forms of family, and particularly Maharashtra side, particularly if you look into, is they form the nuclear family, and the marriage. When talked about marriage, after marriage, a couple normally tries to set up a new household, new structure of household, and this Mara tribal follows the patrilineal residency, patrilineal forms of inheritance, and you will see a monogamy forms of rather marriage is marriage rather than the polygamy, and even before Christianity, but now mostly, particularly the chief, the particularly those who are head of that family, we are there to enter of Christianity. You find there is a practice of polygamy, and this Mara community, particularly patrilineal in descent and inheritance. And if you look into the particularly uh, the advent of the missionaries, particularly Christian missionary in that region, and it can locate from 1907, okay, 1907. Maharashtra have particularly, so particularly Mara, most of the people belongs to Christianity now. They have been converted to Christianity by the Christian missionaries, which brought many changes in their lifestyle as well as culture, and you can trace out these cultures in their daily activity as well. And there are some tremendous changes in the social life as well as of these Mara communities who are now not only wearing Western dresses, because it is never a part of that Mara community, and but also adopted many Western ethos and value system which is associated with Christianity ideology and the Christianity rituals. So if you look into particularly these Mizoram tribe particularly, and it is or a Mizoram as such as a state. You will find there are a lot of major core tribal group, and each tribal group has its own hill. And most of the Mizo tribal group belongs to the Quichen group or the what we call Tibet-Burman clan. Then vast majority of population, or if you look in the inheritance structure, is associated with the particularly patri lineal in nature, and mostly they are belongs to now Christian community, or the particularly their function or the festival or the religious belief based on the Christian community. And a few are practice the Buddhism as well as the Hinduism, but it has the Christianity has a greater impact on this community as people as well. And if you look into particularly tribes of Nagaland, you will see there are different forms of or different types of tribal groups. So Nagaland you can observe particularly, and particularly if you look into major one of the major type in Nagaland is the Naga community, and it is a famous tribal group you can talk about. You will find every literature you can talk about. And the state has a distinct feature or character you can talk about, both in terms of social composition, in terms of ecological composition, in terms of its history of development. And in the present context, particularly in the sociological literature as well as in anthropological literature, this state particularly is a gold mine. Why it is a gold mine particularly? Because it is still unexplored area in the context of scientifically. Still, particularly we the social science never reached this region, and it is a hotspot for our research we can talk about. And the state is blessed with the rich linguistic traditions, with many tribes, with many dialects, with many languages. Okay, they generally speak a variety of language. One which is influenced, one of the forms of language they are influenced by the Tibeto-Burman language, and sometimes classified as dialects as well. And the state has particularly inhabited by 16 tribes. And Naga was such a famous tribe you can call them, particularly O, Chan. Then there is a Lotha, there is a Pom, there is Sangatam, there is Sima, there is Sumi. There are around 16 tribes existed in that particular state. And each tribe has its own distinct and unique cultural practices, and their character in the forms of custom, language, attire will find a total difference. And particularly the state particularly came into being in the 1st of December of 1963, and particularly it is one of the it was officially inaugurated by the then President of India, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan. And if you look into it is geographical composition or rural urban composition, it is predominantly a rural setup area. Around 85% or around 80 to 85% people live in rural setups, particularly or villages, and mostly their villages located in the hilltops. And Nagaland witnessed the highest growth rate in its population over the last decade. If you look into the census of India, 2011 census, and the growth rate, particularly in population, is cause of serious concern in that area as well. And due to its demographic and policymaker of the state for them, and around 80% are literate in that state, and it has around 11. It is 11 district in the Nagaland. Particularly the state of Nagaland is mostly a hilly area. I will see the valleys. We share border with Assam as well as Myanmar in the east, as Manipur in the south, Arunachal Pradesh in the part of the some part of the Assam as well. So around, particularly if you look into the people and society and their culture, it is entirely a tribal state, and different ethnic people live there, and they called as Naga. And from the Nagas, it is referred as Nagaland, and who's belong to Indo-Mongoloid family. And however, the term Naga, what they call inclusive all Naga tribes, and inhabited in different parts of northeast state of Assam, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh. This tribal group have been raised everywhere in the northeast region. So they are present in every different part of the northeast. And Naga belong to the Indo-Mongoloid family, but we have already discussed. And they speak the language of Tibeto-Burman language. And the Nagas are known to outsiders of the world for their past head hunting culture. So most one of the important culture you will find in Naga type the head hunting. The hunting, particularly of the head, for the safety of their villages, particularly hunting of enemies head, particularly if you look into this particularly uh, uh, they are so simple actually. They are so simple. They are friendly. They are particularly straightforward as well, and particularly they have high standard of integrity, trustworthy, as well as the fear was unknown to the Nagas they talked about. And the common feature or the characteristic of this Naga tribal group particularly are they are strong, will to have maintain their separate identity for their culture and for their uniqueness of in their traditional activity, and particularly they have the courage to fight difficulties as well as face the enemies in different situations. And each Naga tribe used to practice own traditional faith. They have own traditional faith, which is constituted of worship of sun, moon, the river, and the so particularly they are the naturalists. They believe in the nature. They worship nature. They particularly pray to the nature, and particularly after Christian missionary introduced to them, to the Nagas particularly, one can say that now almost the entire population of Nagaland uh, is influenced by Christianity. Most of the people believe in Christianity, they are faith and they are practicing the Christianity. And if you look in the village state or village state structure, Naga traditional life revolved around the village, and the village was the highest political unit they consider rather than the state or any block or any subdivision. And the similar culture and shared concern for the security region as well gave broader common framework for meaning and loosely held the member of particularly. So village is considered one of the major political unity among the Naga tradition. And the term village or state is often used as contradictory or contradiction data with Greek term village state. So whether they refer to village as a state as well. And these villages were actually almost located in hilltops, which provided a commanding view over the surrounding area. Choice of hilltops was a strategic one, they called it, and it was a necessity of the time. They had to keep constant vigil about the, particularly as they are head huntings, they have the head hunting culture. So most of the Nagas settled in the hill areas because they can look over to the enemies from the far away. And Naga village setup, particularly village state as an independent unit or independent political unit, and accordingly they enjoyed the right of sovereignty, the right of freedom they talked about. And every village state pursued an independent foreign policy and implemented its own customary laws, rules, and regulation guidelines on all walks of life. Those who are walking around or coming to or those who are living in that area have different policies for them. Okay, and each village or village state had its own defense system, own security system. Administration was indigenous. Their particular governance system was indigenous, independent, and its economy was fully local and sufficient. Mostly depend upon the forest and agriculture for their livelihood. If you look into their community life, one of the most colorful, particularly ingredient of this Naga community or Naga village you can talk about is the community life. And community life, which is important in Naga community, and one Naga individual known no other than it life than its community. So they live in their community actually. They work in group. They take food in group, particularly they eat in group, they sleep in group. There was no individual cultivation. There always community cultivation. There was community harvesting. There is a community construction of house. Everything actually, whatever you find, they all actually were done in the group. And if you look into the philosophical region behind, you will find there is a no concept of individuality. They lived in community life, they lived for their group, and they work for their good. So community life is important for the Naga community. If you look into the Naga clan structure, it is so strong. It is unlike Western societies, it is very difficult for a Naga to convince a situation in which a person has no family member. Means everyone in the clan group as a family member, as a clan, and a Naga child is born not just into a family or into a household, rather they are member of a family of the clan. For the Naga, the clan is important, the family is important, the community is important than the individual self-identity or the individual household or the individual family identity. If you look into the hunting culture, particularly it is important to their cultural aspect in the context of their enemies, in the context of their self-protection. So head hunting was one of the practice in different part of the world at different period of time. If you look into the head hunting, different tribal group actually practice this type of culture, and these forms of culture actually originated out of the belief that the soul matter. Soul mattered actually in a village, and which all life dependable on the soul and was stored in the head of human being. So the soul of individual is in the head of human being. And so whenever a person is beheaded, or particularly head hunting, his head taken to another village and the soul matter, the head actually, inside the soul of head was also transferred to another village, and it was believed among that community that the recipient of the head hunting village would gain prosperity, would gain particularly the population would increase, the crops and fertile, there will be fertile land, crops and cattle would be multiplied. Means there is a growth in that village. If there is a head hunting, there is a growth in their village. Many Western philosopher or scientific, you can talk about scientists, without full understanding the culture of Naga community, actually consider head hunting as a wrongly assumed head hunting and merely a matter of only violence, matter of only murder, matter of only wrong practice. But however, if you look into their culture, they consider head hunting as prosperity to their village, prosperity to their community, prosperity to their land. And however, to Nagas, the head hunting was something noble to be admired by their culture, a proof of bravery, a proof of strength for their community. Naga headhunting was not seamless or senseless killing of a man actually. It is a killing of enemy, but a tradition connected with the tribal principle of pride, heroism or justice or honor or recognition or victimhood was a trophy of honor and bravery. So if someone killed an enemy and bring their head to their villages, so it comes with a heroism, justice, honor as well as it brings development to their community. And while talking about the feast, you will find a feast one of the merit in the Naga communities, and feast of particularly maybe provide most significant social status in the Naga community. And it is the feast performed by the rich people only to share their wealth. You know there is a concept of Gandhi, trusteeship. Okay? You have to share the wealth you have. You have whatever you have, it is not yours. Whatever you have, if it is your for needs and for them it is yours. If it is beyond your needs, it is not yours. Like that, here this type of group perform feast by the rich people to share their wealth with their whole community, and in return they earn the status in society, temporarily salvation from the community, or the rich man then start his life again like a common people. And the status of man and his wife actually in Naga society or Naga community or Naga, which in the Naga tribal group depend much upon the number of feasts you have performed or you have given in your community. Your status belong particularly on the basis of whatever feast you have provided, how many feasts you have provided. So there is a concept of morum. Morum refers to the bachelor dormitory, and morum was a dormitory they called, and for young unmarried men particularly, and it was a way of life in their community and an institution as well that was practiced not only among the Naga community but the neighbor. who are belong to nearby the tribal groups, Naga community like such as Mijos, Garos, tribals of Arunachal Pradesh also perform this institution they talked about. For Naga society particularly, Morum or the bachelor dormitory what they talked about was the most important institutional training grounded for young men to become responsible citizens. So most important thing of this institution to make our young people, make the Naga young people more responsible as a citizen. Okay, so they get training to become a good man, good citizen in the society. And some of the Naga tribes, particularly, had only boys. However, some tribes had morons for both boys and girls. But Naga for Naga, it is the bachelor dormitory for boys only. And in Morum particularly, the Moth's Naga culture, which is associated with that, its custom, its tradition has been transmitted from one generation to other. If a Naga tribe has a knowledge, traditional knowledge, and it is transferred to the offspring or the new youth for this institution, for these Morums. And whether it is a folk song, whether it is a folk dance, whether it is a folk tales, whether it is oral history, whether it is a stone carving, whether it is a skill, whether it is a knowledge, everything will be transferred to the offspring by this institution only. And from the ancient ages, this Naga people particularly, whether it is a folklore or the oral historical tradition, have been primarily means for teaching in the village. Okay, also within the family and these folk stories, whatever they have, it is rich in knowledge, rich in particular information, and it contains as well a romantic episodes of their lifestyle, romantic episode of their particularly their forefathers. They tell more about custom, traditions, or the folkways or norms, more values that are attached to the particular culture of the past. And if you look into the Nagas encounter with the British particularly, and it is interesting actually because most of the Naga hills are yet to be particularly explored, particularly you can talk about, and um, from the inhabitants stages, particularly, Nagals have been free and independent, particularly before the arrival of the British, the Naga lands, particularly. Naga society was unknown to outside world, so they are mostly lived in inaccessible areas. And in the earlier times, particularly the advanced rulers, particularly in Assam, had some sort of relationship with Nagas who tried to subjugate the Nagas but failed later. And the advent of British in 1832 into Naga Hills, particularly, changed the world forever in Nagas land actually. The earlier British relation with Nagas were one perpetual conflict, and Naga did not want any outsider intervene in their affairs, in their lifestyle. Therefore, they fought courageously with the British advance parties actually and caused a big loss to the British. And after 80s actually, 1880s, before 90s, the British troops dominated many parts of Naga Hills, but the Konyak Naga tribal continued to fight against British till 1939. The British administration is most of the Naga villages, but uh, most of the Naga villages found, but they did not have total control on Nagas because in the eastern Nagas they remained unoccupied by the British. Therefore, eastern Naga territory was called unadministered area. So no one can administer their region as well. And history, if you look into the history, and history bears the testimony that many old culture and civilization have lost their identity and might be you can talk to subjugation, assimilation by the powerful forces as well. However, in the case of Naga society, Naga tribal people, its culture as well as social norms and values, it's never happened that the Naga people lost their identity. They have their identity with them. Even during British rule, actually, Naga society preserved its social norms, social values, social customs, gave the social identity intact with them. So, if you look into the tribes in Nagaland at their festival particularly, so there are 14 major Naga tribes lived in Nagaland, namely the O, Chang, Lotha, Om, Pucheri, Ringma, particularly Shima. There are different tribal groups. And there is a tribal group called Angami Naga tribe. These Angami are one of the major Naga tribes of Nagaland. And Kohima village or Bara Busti, they talked with. Bara Busti is considered the second largest village in Asia. And the territory of Angamis is made of present Kohima district, which is divided into four regions once again: the southern Angami, the western Angami, the northern Angami, and the Chakro Angami. And the Angami story of origin of Naga tribes centered in the Kejmi village of Kejakemwan. So Angami tribe is known for their ecological consciousness. They are more toward ecology, use of their water resources, use of their forests, okay? And they actually use their water resource for terraced wet rice cultivation because of this labor intensified cultivated area. Land is important to them. Land is important property to them. And traditionally, property is divided equally among the sons as well as daughters. Also receive the when daughter also receive the share. And if look into the festivals, particularly this Angan is celebrated particularly Sekrinai, one of the festival in month of February. It normally falls in the 25th day of the Angami month. They have their own month. They call it Kechai. And the 10-day festival is also called uh, Kusoni by the Anganis, and the festival follow circle of rituals, ceremony. The best being Kijai, Thekra High. Thekra High is the best part of the festival, they called it, where the young people of the village sit together and sing traditional songs for long time or throughout the day. And they called it Thakra High. And the Naga tribe, particularly, we talked about, the Naga tribe inhabits the district of Mokochung. They believe that their ancestors emerged from the Long Turk or the six stones, from the stones lying at the top of the spur on the right bank of the Dikhu, just opposite of Mokochung. So these are particular geographical setup, how they emerge actually. The stone from the stones they emerge, they talked about. The stones are located in the Chungliamit, the first Ao tribe village, which is the present located in Sangatham area of the Nagaland. Ao are also called Or, as well as which means those who went out, means those who are gone or those who are went out from their territory. They called as Aos. This is the direct reference to the migration of the people from the first village established by Saos called Chuglimit. Chuglimit. So if you look into the festivals, I was observe Mostumang festival after sowing the particularly sowing dawn in the cultivation phase. It provides hours a period of recreation activities after some strenuous job they talked about. The festival marked by vigorous songs, dances, by merrymaking corn, which is observed a 3 day from 1 to 3rd May particularly. So there is another festival called Tungrimong, which is celebrated in the eve of harvest. So most of the festival associated with the cultivation. Then there is another tribal group called Saksong Naga, and this Saksong Naga is one of the prominent tribe in Nagaland, which occupies the district of Peg. And more in here, this Chaksanga tribal group actually celebrates seven festivals, and every festival is attached to particularly different religious as well as cultivation agricultural activities. And this there is another tribal group, Chang Naga tribe. There is another tribal group, Hima tribe. Okay, there are different group of tribal. Just you can find out from the book as well. You can look into their festival, look into their particularly cultural lifestyle, look into their occupation as well. So there is you will find a lot of difference way of lifestyle, way of dialect, way of particularly their occupation. So if you look the status of women in the Naga society or Naga tribal society, particularly, It is a classless society, casteless society, particularly. Women have traditionally enjoyed a high social position in Naga society, and they have a pivotal role in the family, both in the family as well as the community life, community affairs, and being a patriarchal family, which man is a head, father is the head, with strong warrior tradition. Whereas we are talking about the enemies, we are talking about the head hunting culture. It is considered an honor to be born as a man in the society of Naga. Though women are highly respected in this society, in this Naga community, they are not traditionally included in decision making process. But now, in the clan or in the village, but now they are part of the decision making process. Apart from this traditional practices that they have generally cared about women, they have generally culture in present Nagaland society has been successful in achieving high women literacy rate in the Naga community, what Census 2011 talked about. There is an increase in the sex ratio, health, and particularly entrepreneurial development among the women. In this larger context, if you look into the women's status, it can be said that a Naga woman just more privileges than most of their women elsewhere in the Indian Northeast region or in the country. And majority of the Naga tribal group or Naga women are engaged in cultural activities, allied sector such as cultivation of various kinds of cereal, particularly or they engage in the cart making and all the impact they're engaged in different activities actually. And the impact of all these Naga society from then now to bring a significant impact on their society. They continue to do so nowadays also, but also participating in newer areas, changing their environment as well. And men traditionally pay dowry to the family of bride at the time of marriage, the forms of lifestyle. And this practice is different. Means mostly women are respected in the society. They have a responsible society we can talk about, particularly in the case of incident of dowry death, incident of female infanticide, neglect of girl child are absent in Naga society. We will not find such cases. However, property is inherited in the male sector, male dominated. However, total male has the property but transmitted through the birth. Most of the you can talk to male have co-occurrence of the right of the ancestral property. Women have no such right, but still they have a good life. They have there is particularly male member are particularly giving much priority to the women as well. And the women have no such inheritance right, although acquired properties by own or gifted by uh, their fathers as well. And in today's time, in the present context, Naga women have started entering in various professions as we are talking about, such as teaching, administration, police service, engineering, they're entering into the technology sector, trading, cottage industry, floriculture. So they have their impact in every aspect of society in the Naga culture. And a handful of them actually have also entered a highly competitive sport market. What literature suggests, around the literacy rate of this Naga woman is around 76%. And actually, with the advancement of Christianity and modernization, most of the culture has been changed, and education is one of the most main scenario region which have brought so many transformation in the tribal society, Naga society, and the educational institution have produced thousands of graduates, postgraduates, as well as we can talk about different from the different disciplines, and all this development as a result of education and economic development in that corridor. And Naga society actually in a phase of tremendous transformation, both in educational, in development, in service sector, and the spread of Christianity and the growth of education, development, implementation of the have a greater impact in the Naga society. So, which is for all, this is for today. So, in the next class, we'll discuss other tribal groups which are settled in different part of North as well as Northeast regions of India. Any question, any doubt? Okay, we'll end here. Thank you all. Sir, you have any question or any doubt? Want any
No,
clarification?
no, sir.
Okay, then see you tomorrow.
Good night, sir.
Good night, Kunal.